Hello and welcome to another episode of the World Class Real Estate Podcast. My name is Mark Worrell and today we have the full gang back together. I'm joined by Mr. Ian Macbeth and Mr. Sam Hunter. Sam, how are you, my friend? Long time no see.
Hello, chaps. It has been a very long time. I'm working late. I got the night off. I was going to say maybe night on. I'm not sure. I just finished up a very long meeting, and I was like, you know what? It's going to finish just before we kick off. I had already teed it up with Lissy that I was not on bath or bedtime duty tonight, so here I am. Thanks for having me back.
Great to have you back. Yeah, like I say, you've been well missed. So before we jump back to Sam, Ian, how are you, mate? There was a bit of noise you were making on social recently.
Yeah, dropped a few grenades on Thursday just to let the world know that we were going to be deleting the Instagram and Facebook pages for Avocado, which was quite a big statement. Obviously, with a little bit of clickbait involved in it to what actually happened next.
Clickbait? Surely not.
The master of clickbait. I've taken the title off Watkins. But yeah,
you'll get it back by the end of this podcast.
Yeah, it was exciting, and it was something we needed to do, and I can explain in detail when we get sort of stuck into it what the logic behind it was. But half term this week, so if a kid breaks in, then this is live TV. Anything can happen. And a solid week last week from a training point of view. I'm in the thick of getting ready for the ultras in the summer now, the ultra marathons. So I had a really good week last week. So I'm feeling tip top actually. I had a really good week training last week. Good week for business. Kids are off this week. So ticking all the boxes really. What about you, Mark? There's some good stuff going on in your world, I hear.
Yes. So I was saying just off air, we are due to exchange contracts today. We'll be moving on Thursday. So I got my full solicitors 100. Well, actually, I had two reports. One report was 30 pages. The other was 142 pages, which were a bit of a distraction at work yesterday, I'll be honest. And I went back to the solicitor last night. She said, "Oh, you've actually read it." I mean, if conveyancing
through ChatGPT, didn't you?
Nobody. I should have done it. It would have been a good idea. I actually wanted to know what was in this thing, and that includes all the searches and everything. But it did really open my eyes to how conveyancing is done nowadays. Going through the process has been so educational for me, being on the other side of it. But now it feels so close. The house is boxed up. We went round to measure up for curtains and what have you the other day. Excitement within our household is sort of reaching fever pitch. Apart from my 7-year-old, who was a bit upset the other day, and he said to the rest of the family, "It's all right for you. You've moved before. I've never moved. I've never moved before." So all of the emotion aside, excitement is really, really bubbling. Yeah. It's going to be a busy week. I think half term is probably a good week for us to move as well in terms of activity at work and what have you.
Can I ask a question on the reports that you had? I want to know what's an 150-page report and how anyone is expected to get through that when then apparently you're going to exchange and complete 72 hours later.
It's insane, isn't it? Right. So that's how conveyancing is done. Now, we chose a solicitor that we recommend, and to be fair, she's been fast, really, really quick. But you don't get the opportunity to sit down with them and go through that report. And I think it's really important to know that if that's the service that you want as a client, to sit down and go through a report. Incidentally, I had a conversation with one of my clients who's buying on, and she was saying that she's not had anything from a solicitor. She's pushed back on a few things. I said, "You need to get in a room with her." She said, "It's so hard." So I think if estate agents are recommending solicitors, it's important that we know their reporting process and do they sit down, because particularly on buy side, if we're recommending solicitors on buy side that are just producing these reports, it's very difficult for me, who knows the industry, I would say, pretty much inside out, to actually sit and decipher 142 pages. A layman's got absolutely no chance of doing so. And that's been a real education piece for me. And like you say, in the last, 72 hours, and it does, how do you find the time to go through 142 pages? My son said to me, what did you do at work today, Daddy? Sat and read a 142-page report, basically, most of the day, and then worried about some elements of it. Went to see my old man, who's a solicitor. We went through some bits about it. He worried about some bits about it as well. he's retired now, so obviously he couldn't do the transaction for me. But to answer your question, Sam, what is in the report? There's a lot. If you think a survey is full of arse covering, my report was, exactly the same and then some. And it had a lot of paragraphs in there that are clearly spat out by their CRM that are just generic paragraphs, covering the backside. Then it also had all the full search results in there. Now, half of that, I'm like, I don't need the 12-page local search. I need you to tell me what it says. Instead, you've got some generic paragraphs of what it says, and then the search as well for you to maybe make your own assumptions based on what's in there. So yeah, that's been a real learning curve for me, and something that I think we'll probably be addressing as a team as to how we move forward, because I really like the solicitor that we use because she's fast. But I think depending on the client will depend on the type of solicitor that we recommend. But I think it's really hard. I don't know what you would say about this. I think it's really hard if you go through the conveyancing process now as a client to get down and sit in front of your solicitor. Do you find that? Do you think that happens in your neck of the woods, Ian?
I don't think anyone really meets with a solicitor that much at all. Everything. I mean, most people will use solicitors that are not actually local anymore, because somewhere along the transaction, either the broker, the agent, a contact has referred them to use someone else, and they're never really local. We try and keep them local, but even if they were, I still don't think people often go in, at the point of reporting. I don't think a lot of people go in less than 10%. I would assume it is, from.
Yeah, I bet you're right. And it just goes to show, I thought, I bet no one needs these. And then I was speaking to one of my clients about the report yesterday, and I was saying, this has come up. We were just having a bit of a chat about it. One of the clients do a lot of work with, and he said, no one reads those reports. And then the solicitor said the same, no one reads those reports. I mean, it's mad, isn't it?
That means they don't read it.
Sorry?
That means they don't read it either.
I'd hope not, but maybe.
So a very similar thing happens here. I just think it happens a lot faster, where you get a big search pack of everything that's come back, but it comes accompanied with a letter from the solicitor where they're like, these are your searches. This is what you need to know. And it's maybe at most a paragraph per search outlining the key. Like it might be, as you said, it might be the local town plan comes back as a search, and that could be a 30-page document. It could be a 2-page document depending on where you've bought. But the solicitor says, you zoned this, there's a plan to create a shopping center around the corner or whatever it is, or widen the road 400 meters away from you, or change the flight path or whatever it might be. You're not expected to read. You can read the whole thing if you want because it's provided to you because you paid for it and they're yours technically. But they've done their job by providing commentary around what is actually the most important thing to take out of that. Do you not get that? Or was that the 30-page thing and then the one...
To be fair, there is that commentary on it.
Okay.
So, but it's not, it's not.
They do read it.
It's not a one. Yeah. Sorry, yes. Yeah. It's not a one paragraph sort of thing, and it's not just a dump of all the searches. So there is their legal thing, and I suppose if you maybe didn't have the interest or knowledge that I have, maybe you just read that first bit. But I thought it was right that I actually, looked through it. And interestingly enough, when I looked through it, it took me back to a sale that we had that fell through in December. And I remember the client saying to me, I've got this ridiculously long report from the solicitor expected to be exchanging in 2 days. And I've sent them 30 questions on the report. And one was in regards to a very tedious fracking link that is about 30 miles from here. And now I've seen my own search that's got the same tedious fracking link. And I'm like, all right, that's where she saw it in page 80 of the solicitor's report. So I've had a sale fall through for this, exact sort of reason. Fairly well.
That's why I think it's so important to have the local solicitor that understands, because it's so different. Like for me, where I am at the moment, I'm on a road with about 30 houses, and then the estate's probably got about 200 houses. every house is detached. You can't get planning anywhere around this estate. There's no space for that. The houses were all built in the 90s. Like, there's not really a lot going on. Like, if I can't even remember 7 years ago what level of report I got, but it wouldn't have been something that I would have looked at and been pulling my hair out with all sorts of different bits, because it's pretty standard. Whereas if you're looking at like a 1920s semi in the middle of like a farmer's field, and there's just 4 properties in that little kind of main drag, that's a little bit of a different kind of look. So I think, and the same when you got a new build site, something that's been built 3 or 4 years ago, a road's adopted, what's going on here, there and everywhere. If you've got that kind of local solicitor that understands what that estate or what that road or what that kind of area is about, it's just a simple call, isn't it? Really, it is the chat GPT equivalent.
Yeah.
Friend of mine's buying a property. It's like a 60s build terrace property, but he had the level 2 survey come back, and he kind of said, can you have a look at some of these little bits? And one of the things was just how they described the fact that there was a rip in the felt in the roof between the tiles and the beams. Like I can't even remember what it was, but it was the most unnecessary description of the fact that there was a bit of a tear in the felt. That he didn't understand what it was. He's like, what's the problem? I was like, there's just a tear in the felt. If a bit of rain comes in, it's coming in because you haven't got a backup behind the tile, basically. So just when you move in, just get it fixed and you won't have any leaks. He was like, oh, well, that's simple. It's like over complex terminology sometimes is something that solicitors and surveyors can be guilty of. How's that work for you, Sam, with like the buyer stuff? You mentioned off camera you've done quite a lot of house purchases, but as a sort of in your setup, obviously we're working for sellers and buyers, but we are working for sellers predominantly. Yours is slightly different in how you're working, so I'm interested to know how that process looks for you.
We hold their hand to the point of a contract being agreed, and then a solicitor gets involved from there. We're in a fortunate place in Australia where 99.9% of residential contracts are all signed on the same document. So once you've seen enough of one, you can review it very quickly. And that's why it's not every state in Australia where that's the case, but in Queensland, Victoria, and I think Western Australia it is, which means buyers can act with a lot of confidence, whether they're represented or not. And solicitors know what they're getting in for. And so they get involved at the point of contract. From there, average time to sort of complete in Brisbane is about 45 days. It used to be 30, but it's a little bit longer now, mainly because there's just not enough houses to buy. So they're a little bit more cautious.
45 days?
For sure. Most of the deals that we do are 90 days because they either will need to sell something and against our advice have decided to buy before they sell, or we're lining it up with somebody who is selling first and wants that time to then go and find somewhere else. So we've given them certainty in terms and price. We can exchange, which we call go unconditional, in 7 days. And then they know they've sold and they've got 83 days to go and find the next place and try and line those dates up, which is good. So, a lawyer gets involved. They do all the same sort of searches. The longest search probably takes 2 weeks to come back. It's all electronic. They review them. They put it together in a pack with the letter. The letter might not be 1 page, Mark. It might be 3 or 4 pages, depending on how many you have. We literally recorded a podcast on this yesterday where we're like, you'll get a list of 45 different searches and there's maybe 6 that you want to do, and that's it. Everything else is like, if you're working with us, we've already done half of them up front because that's what we do in our due diligence. And the other things are like contaminated land. And for properties that aren't on main roads, you probably don't have contaminated land because usually that's where a petrol station was. So it's like, do you need to do that? Probably not. But some people spend thousands of dollars on searches. Most people spend between $200 and $400. But yeah, they're all electronic. They all come back. You get your search pack. Good lawyers will send it to you as soon as it's prepared and they've written it up and it's ready to go. We had a property settle last week where the solicitor sent it to them after 5 p.m. the night before settlement. Not telling and again, this is a lesson for us because why we just did the podcast was because we didn't tee it up that they could expect that. And it is what it is. We know most of it, but you're going to get it So, 10 to 6 the night before settlement, they're like, holy shit, there's this thing we've got to read, and what does it all mean? So there's a lesson. But yeah, no, lawyers get involved at the pointy end, and they kind of just manage a very standard process. It is literally the opposite of England. I said to a mate of mine who I met in Sydney the other day, who has a real estate business there and is thinking about going to England, so he's picking my brain. And I was like, you should open your company in any country other than England and potentially Wales. Even Scotland's better. And I was like, it's just, unless you don't want to get paid for a year, go somewhere else. And that is, I don't know how you guys do it. That's the reality of it. There's better ways to make money in the UK than starting in a state agency from scratch. But if you can, as both of you have, it's reasonable living once you get the cash flow up and running.
There we go, everyone.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear the difference in the systems and the processes and the way that you do it, and it's very hard not to look on enviously at a system that is better geared up than ours. We were really organised, and you said to me off air, Ian, that was quick, and our transaction has been quick, but we still agreed it at the end of November, and we're basically in February. I don't know, you lose 2 weeks for Christmas, but it's
That's
still
lightning, right? You are doing it in 50% of the time on average, right? And you probably still felt 100% of the stress, but at least it was a shorter experience of stress and not this strung out thing where you've forgotten what normal life feels like.
Yeah. The process. Do you think Sam's process is a bit more like the lettings process in the UK market? It sort of feels a bit more like that aspect of it. Reservation, within 7 days, get through to tenancy agreement sign. All the tenancy agreements are roughly the same. Everyone's kind of happy with that aspect of it. Then it gets into the referencing part, which kind of the agent obviously isn't involved. It's like you've almost got them up to tenancy agreed. Referencing happens, everyone checks, and then it's moved in and it's all done and dusted in 30 days or less, as the case may be with lettings. It feels more like that sort of process. Really simple, really easy to work. Everyone knows the milestones and it kind of just happens. But for sales, for some reason, it's just really archaic and complex still.
I don't actually know whether it was like that in Australia. It hasn't been. Like, the biggest change since I've been in real estate, which is 2010, is we used to handwrite contracts. Now they're all DocuSign. But the searches and everything were all the same. The only one that probably wasn't was if you used to have to go and find like old copies of titles. Someone used to, like they do with a sort of search agent in the UK, you'd go and line up at the council's office and go and find some records. But I don't know, Australia hasn't done many things well over time, but I think we digitized records pretty early and kind of jumped on that bandwagon. Because 45-day settlement's pretty standard across the country, and in Brisbane it used to be 30 days was standard. We did one, we agreed a property at the end of January, it settles tomorrow. It's going to be 20 days from contract, like offer agreed to them moving in, because they had to move. Their rental expires tomorrow, so they're under serious pressure. That's why they got us involved, and we, touch wood, everything goes well tomorrow, which I'm sure it will, pulled off a small miracle.
Yeah, it's insane to hear, somebody moving in within 20 days. That is, just out of this world. And I think you're right, Ian. I think what you talked about there, Sam, is a more templated process, I think, where everything's a little bit more standard, and that's what we'd want. A lot of upfront, you do a lot of upfront work, you sellers, right, when they're coming to market, the pest surveys and all this sort of thing.
Yeah, I think everyone's just a little bit more organized because they know that transparency and organization breeds confidence, so it probably ends up in a better price for them. And because so many agents have recommended that, it's kind of become the expected thing from a purchaser as well. It just then depends on whether you want to rely on the information that's provided. Like, we've had, building and pest surveys that have come through from our clients, and they've been like 2 pieces of paper written in Comic Sans font, where the guy's literally, like, absolutely no joke, 2 pieces of paper written in Comic Sans font, where he's like, I'm only indemnified for the cost of this report, which was $70. No photos, no nothing. And we're just like, what the fuck is this? Like, are you saying this is a building a pest? And he's like, absolutely. The guy's a licensed builder. I was like, well, he's not an insured builder. So a good one costs like $650, and the guy will spend an hour and a half there, like thermal cameraing. Our guy that we use has a drone. He flies it up and looks on the roof, because legally they're not allowed to get on the roof in case they fall off and die. So instead of being like, I can't do it, he's thought outside the box, and he's like, I'll get a drone. That way we can see the whole roof up close if we have to. It's sick.
Yeah, I crashed my drone a couple of weeks ago. That's another story. So, uh, let's just segue from the process to a little bit of an update from you, Sam, if that's all right, because it's been a little while since you've been on. I don't think you've been on this year. So tell us a little bit about how life is going at Happy Buyers Club. What's going well for you? What challenges have you got on the buy side in a very different market to what we see here in the UK?
For sure. It's going well. I think that's it's going very well. We're flat our feet. We're at the position now where we're trying to figure out what we do. Do we hire more people? Should they have experience? Should they not? Do we just continue to run a waiting list? I still haven't figured out how to tell people without sounding like a complete wanker that we have a waiting list, but it's what keeps us sane and allows us to work 6 days a week instead of 7. It's been really positive. I think we've always had a pretty solid client list throughout the sort of 13, 14 months that the business has been going. But we're doing deals faster now because people know us, as in the agents know us more, so we're getting stuff sooner. Yeah. The biggest difference between selling houses and buying houses is when you list a property for sale, you have the asset and the buyers will come to you and you don't care who buys it, really. You're there to sell it to someone who's hopefully going to pay the most money, or maybe someone who can offer the right terms, right? Because that is valuable to people. I believe that the work we do is far more rewarding. It's definitely more fun, particularly on the marketing side of things. But it's way harder because you win the listing, which is the client. Then you've got to compete against all the other people out there who are at differing levels of searches, have differing budgets, have differing motivations, have differing levels of desperation. So we went to an auction on the weekend, and first-time buyer wanted to buy a unit. Maximum price was $640. We could see that the only other people in the room were the other young people bidding on this property. Basically, it was in-room auctions. There was like 23 auctions in 2 hours. And I was like, we'll bid when it gets to 610. I'm like, just sit on your hands. When it gets to 610, you go to 625, and all these other people will just be defeated. Like, they'll look at me with hate, and you've just got to stoically stare at the auctioneer and be happy with it. And the bidding started at 540 and ended up getting to 607, 500. And I was like, 625. So Tom puts his hand up and goes 625. The young guy who was there with his mum was like, and he put his bidding card inside the booklet of all the houses that were being sold that day. And I was like, gotcha. Then this old guy at the back goes 680. Yeah. So yeah, he owned a complex of 6. He owned 2 others in the building. He was always the buyer at the end of it. Our max was 640. We never even got the chance to go to our max. It was just like 680. I'm buying it. See you later. And so not a positive story, but like Tom, my client, came out of that and he was just like, that was sick. He's just like, I feel like I've just learnt heaps. Yeah. So yeah, like good and bad stories, but that's the thing. Like we won the client. We didn't buy the house. If we'd won that listing, we just sold it for 680 and we don't care about who misses out, right? So we've got to find the opportunities. We've got to understand ideally what they're worth and then what they're worth to our clients, which are 2 very different numbers most of the time. We made 2 offers on 2 separate properties on Friday. Both of our clients are developers, but they don't do the building themselves. They were both development sites. We lost out to builders who could offer more because they're doing the work themselves, so they've got a better margin they can work towards. So it's not all sunshine and rainbows. Like, we're doing good numbers of deals, but for certain people, you're limited by budget, you're limited by geography, you're limited by school catchments, or you're limited by just the capacity for risk. If you're buying something at 1.2 and you're relying on selling it at $3 million, there's a lot that's got to go in your favor for all that to stack up. So some people are happy with that risk, others are happy to wait for the next thing.
Yeah, nice. I didn't think about the ongoing challenge of working for a buyer when you can't find them something. It's really interesting. I've listened to a few of your podcasts. Not that it means very much to me over here, but I enjoy it, and for obvious reasons. And I'm seeing loads of the stuff that you do on social. How important has the social media side of things been to you growing the business? Because it's not been a business for a very long time, really. What you say, 13, 14 months, and it seems like if you've got a waiting list and you talked about recruiting, you've had a lot of success there. What do you put that down to?
World-class agency. everything we talk about on this bloody show for 5 years. Yeah, all we do is we just do a video most days. It's not every day, but we probably do 5 videos a week. They're all 50 to 70 seconds. We post them at the same time every day, which is just before 4 o'clock our time, because we know that's when people are going home, or they've already picked their kids up and they are home and they're just like TV's on before they're ready for dinner. I practice what I've been yelling at you and now Ian for 5 years of just fucking do it. It helps. Like I've got a cheat code, which is that I get to go to work with my best mate every day, and we have pretty good banter. And our podcast, which is now where we get most of our videos from, evolved from us role playing, so that he didn't have to experience a shit real estate agent in real life. He just got to talk to me in real life first all the time, right? And watching those back to sort of sense our reactions when things happen and how we were delivering lines and what did we look like, not just what did we sound like. Both of us were like, that's pretty good. We both said it's not shit. And that is most, like, every lead that we get, and we probably get 2 leads a day from our socials every day. It's I listen to your podcast. And most of them and again, the leads, unless, we have a few people listen to our podcast, but I don't imagine it converts that highly. What I think they mean to say is, I watch your videos.
Yeah.
And so they know what we sound like. They know what we look like. When we have a conversation with them on the phone, in person, whatever, we're saying the same shit they've already heard. So there's no selling. It's what do you cost and when can you start? Which is good.
Nice. Like I said, they need to know that you built that no like trust, haven't you?
For sure. And again, the cheat code is I'm sitting across from somebody, or I'm working every day with somebody I've known for 20 years. Like, we live together. So we have every in-joke under the sun we can talk to. I know when he's about to stop talking. He knows when I'm about to stop talking. So there's not a lot of dead air in those shows or whatever it might be. We dovetail really nicely in meetings where I'll talk about the technical practitioner side of real estate. He talks to the emotional side of it because he's experienced that, right? And we do really well. And he's exceptional at what he does. He's probably better than me, I think, in a lot of respects. I might just know more of I will overthink the scenarios a little bit more, whereas he'll play the man really well, particularly for in a negotiation. It's been good. It's gone way beyond what we thought we could have done in this period. We're probably where we thought we would be this time next year now. And we want to make sure that we keep that momentum up, but also don't lose ourselves along the way, because we're working fucking hard.
Nice.
Sounds like the start of when we kicked off Avocado the first 18 months, exactly the same sort of stuff, getting the video out a day, drilling the socials, being bold with our value that we were giving, the topics that we were discussing, the problematic scenarios, the how to fix certain things, the solutions, giving the answers away on socials. And it just gets you to that point where people go, oh, I watched that video with that person, or I listened to what that person said, or that headline. And as a result, it snowballs, and it can snowball really, really quickly if you keep that habit going, basically. And we were exactly the same as where you are there, with me and Mike, where we were 18 months in and we'd have been quite happy at the 3-year period at that point. But the socials were the big driver of that, and still are really now.
Why'd you blow them up then?
Well, that's it. Yeah. We obviously decided that, not obviously, but we decided that Instagram and Facebook we'd built over the last 4.5 years prior to the iOS update. We'd also built them as estate agents. So our socials and our followers are for homeowners as estate agents, which is the same as what the other Avocado partners have. They are estate agents locally. We are now estate agents nationally in sort of that sort of hierarchy, if you like. But that's not really what we wanted our socials to be. We wanted our socials to be about the Avocado brand. So we had some technical issues with Meta. We got hacked January last year. I think it was January last year, by someone in Thailand that kind of got into our ads manager, messed a few things up. We still got access to everything, but it's just made things not work as well as it should have after we got hacked. from the things that we can post and what we can do and what we can share and what we can comment on, and who's got access to certain things. So just had a meeting with marketing, and we just decided, do you know what? Let's just make a power play here. Let's just show that we can do it, put our money where our mouth is, rebuild the socials with a new audience in a slightly different way, talk about the brand, go behind the scenes, not be an estate agent, but talk about property, estate agency, appeal to estate agents and homeowners and landlords and buyers and tenants and anyone that's just generally interested in what the kind of brand is, really. So yeah, on Friday we just totally stopped the old socials and we've transitioned on to brand new socials. And it's been sort of 3 days now since doing that, and we're going to carry on in exactly the same way you said, with the setup that we want, the behind the scenes footage, appeal to the brand, tell the stories. We're not going to be selling houses on our socials or anything like that. There won't be like property videos as such. But we've done one video on the weekend, for example, where I went and met Mike in High Wycombe, and he talked us through a property and the viewing of what he would do on the property. So he talked through the eyes of the agent, what he's doing on the viewing, what he's talking about, where the local pub is, the things that he's looking at, why he gets there early, what he does, XXX. And that's the sort of stuff that we want to kind of try and be known for, be trusted for, really. So yeah, it's a total U-bend by, the fact that we'd built 10,000 followers across those socials and probably spent the best part of 50 grand in ads to those socials over the last kind of 5 years as well. Is it putting it in the bin? No, because we are where we are now. It's just starting again in a different segue, basically. And yeah, I've quite enjoyed running the new ads and creating the new content. And now I'm under pressure to make sure that I do more of it. And I think last year I went a little bit behind the scenes a little bit. I kind of still posted on LinkedIn and stuff, but I didn't do as much content myself as I probably should have done for the public. So that's a big thing that I wanted to do this year as well. And this kind of puts me under pressure to do that. So excited to see how it goes.
Us too.
Yeah, that's how it went.
How many followers have you got already?
I think it's about 300 across both of them. I think we're sort of gaining 30 or 40 a day, across the both of them. But that's the easy part. The first week is easy because it's just people realizing what's going on. And, most of the first day, I think we had 50 within a couple of hours, and I just looked through it and there's just all estate agents, they're kind of like, oh, what's going on here? But I did get a lot of WhatsApps in the industry where people were kind of saying, oh, what's going on here? What's going on there? And, it's, you can cause a scene quite quickly by being quite controversial.
I hope you said you have to listen to the podcast to find out.
Well, a lot of people have been messaging me about the podcast as well, which has been nice. A lot of people in LinkedIn DMs and stuff like that. A lot of people say, oh, I love the podcast you guys do, and always talking about different guests. But actually, a lot of people kind of quite like the ones where we just spitball without a guest and kind of just get into the crux of helping estate agents, basically. So had a lot of good feedback about that this year as well. So just shows the power of long form content, being used as short form content and kind of dovetailing the both of them, which is what Sam's talking about there, is having a conversation like this, chopping it up into segments, which obviously we do. And you can see that on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, for this podcast, you can see the highlight clips across all of them. And that makes a big difference, I think, for people to get to know you, really. So, yeah, I'm a big fan of the socials, obviously.
Ditto.
Yeah.
Probably, you guys are making me feel a bit guilty. Probably need to up our game.
We've only been talking about it for 5 years, Mark. So you've got time.
Yeah, we do a bit. But we're probably just not as much as you guys. So, yeah, I think there's
You've upped it though this year, haven't you, Mark? You're kind of now doing your ads and you've got your funnel set up and more video content. So, that will make a big difference, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we've always done quite a lot of video, and I think our thing with the socials has been having a real focus on what we want to put out on each channel. Previously, we've probably been pretty generic what is going out, and I think those days have gone. I think you need to think differently for each individual channel, and that's what we're doing. And we've got the team thinking now almost social first as well, which was, a thought that you guys have that, I will have at times, but actually the big difference for us this year has been that the team are, really clued into that, right? What are we putting out on Facebook? What are we putting out on Instagram? And actually the great thing for us here is we had a new system put in that the team designed so that they know what they're doing on socials. And that didn't come from me or one of the other, senior members. It came from actually the team, which is always really good to see because you can see the difference that they're starting to make. So yeah, long may that continue. And then maybe one day we'll be able to build up to, 10,000 followers, like you're saying.
Sarah.
Amazing. Well, thank you very much for listening. As you know, we do this because we love our industry. We want to see it improve and get better. If you have enjoyed today's episode, please share it out on social media. Reach out to Sam. Tell him that you're happy that he's back. I'm Mark Worrell. He's Ian Macbeth and Sam Hunter. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you again next week.